Ma'am, that boy lived with me in the orphanage. The words fell with the clatter of steel on marble as Amari Brooks's toolbox hit the floor, sockets rolling like startled coins under the long leather sofa. The Morera Manor's great room swallowed the echo, but not the tremor in his voice. Rain pressed against the tall windows, and the old grandfather clock clicked through the storm with the stubborn dignity of a courthouse gavel. Evelyn Morera froze beside the fireplace, a crystal tumbler of still water halfway to her lips. For a second her reflection wavered in the glass, a woman in a navy house jacket, silver threaded at the temple, posture as straight as the oil portraits that lined her walls. She didn't look at the man. She looked at the portrait. The boy above the mantel was 8 at most. A half-smile pitched between mischief and trust. Dark hair combed as if a loving hand had smoothed it down and then couldn't resist ruffling it again. The artist had captured something that American money couldn't buy and grief couldn't kill. The spark in his eyes. Evelyn's index finger tightened against the rim of the glass until the chill bit her skin. "Don't be foolish," she told herself. "Don't let hope make a fool of you again." "What did you say?" The question came out softer than she intended, almost a plea. Amari lifted his gaze. The man had a custodian's posture, shoulders willing to carry what others discarded, but his eyes were the careful kind that counted exits and listened for what wasn't said. He was new to the house. HR said he was punctual, discreet, good with old mechanisms. He swallowed. Sorry, ma'am. I wasn't trying to be." "Say it," she said. "Clearly." "That boy lived with me." Amari managed. "At Street Vincent's, Pennsylvania. We called him Daniel." Evelyn set the glass on the mantel and heard it tick against the stone. Street Vincent's. A memory flexed, as involuntary as breath drawn between notes on a piano. In the next room, beyond the archway, a cover lay over a walnut grand like a folded flag. She had not lifted it in 30 years. The rain lifted for a beat, then returned, stitching the house to the night. "You're certain?" she said, and hated the tremble that scraped the last word. "Yes, ma'am." Amari crouched to gather the scattered tools, palms shaking. A 13mm socket spun against the baseboard, rang once, and stilled. "I've lived with that face in my head since I was 10. He wouldn't talk much. Drew pictures all the time. A house with ivy and a window that opened on a piano. He'd wait by the gate at sunset like sunset was a person he had an appointment with." Evelyn's throat closed. A piano, a gate, a boy waiting at the hinge of afternoon. For years she had taught herself not to trust the brain's cheap parlor tricks, the way it made patterns out of coincidences and called them miracles. She had built companies instead. Logistics, clean energy, the Helena Fund. She had written checks to organizations with careful outcomes. Literacy, nutrition, transitional housing. She had delivered commencement addresses and said the words that sounded right. Resilience, community, hope. None of it raised the dead or unspooled the afternoon the world went quiet. You can't walk back a scream, her mind had learned. You can only teach your feet a different direction. "How long were you there?" she asked. "Street Vincent's?" "Most of my childhood," Amari said, standing now, the toolbox closed against his thigh like something he had to hold or he would shake apart. "Daniel showed up when I was maybe 9. They said he lost his parents in a wreck. But he'd tell me stories about a big house and a sister who could play Chopin with her eyes closed. He called her his big champion." Evelyn's breath left in a quiet sound that was not a word. Big champion. The clock ticked again, precise, indifferent. Somewhere in the house, a heater kicked on and sent a sigh through the vents. She turned to the portrait fully, as if she might catch the boy moving, breathing, offering the half-smile to her alone. "Why are you telling me now?" she whispered. "Because I didn't recognize him till I looked long enough," Amari said, then flinched at his own boldness. "Forgive me. The first day here, I thought he looked familiar. Tonight it hit me. 30 minutes ago, Sister Magdalena called the house phone. Said she found a box behind an old cabinet when the shelter dog started barking at the wall like there was a squirrel in it. It had files from the 90s. A sketch. The same house he always drew. It's got a faded stamp from Blue Haven, North Carolina. There's something there. Sister Magdalena. Blue Haven. The names fell into place like coordinates. Evelyn pressed her fingertips to her temple. In the glass beyond the mantel she saw the ghost of a girl of 8, red scarf crooked under her chin, holding the hand of a 4-year-old with impatient legs. The park had smelled like cut grass and hot pretzels. Their mother had played after lunch, a nocturne loose with laughter. "You're my little champion." The boy had crowed, then tried to race a pigeon and forgot that streets are not stories. The world has a sound when it shatters. No amount of years makes that sound pretend to be rain. "Stop," she told herself, and lifted her chin. She had learned to stand in boardrooms as if gravity had nothing to teach her. "You have Sister Magdalena's number," she said. "Yes, ma'am." "Call her. Put it on speaker." Amari set the toolbox on a side table. Evelyn didn't bother correcting the breach of furniture etiquette and thumbed his phone with a breath that misted the screen. The line clicked and a voice with edges softened by time answered. Irish lilt worn thin by Pennsylvania winters. "Street Vincent's. This is Sister Maggie." "It's Amari Brooks," he said. "I'm with Miss Morera." A pause, a small intake of air like a candle deciding whether to live. "The sister?" Sister Maggie said, but made it a question wrapped in prayer. "Yes," Evelyn said, stepping closer to the phone as if it were a hearth. "This is Evelyn Morera." "Child," the nun said, the word collapsing 30 years. "Forgive me for calling so late, I wasn't sure. You ought to see what the dog dragged me into. We found an old ledger box tucked behind a cabinet when Buddy wouldn't hush. Inside was a drawing I'd swear on St. Bridget I've seen 100 times. A grand house with ivy, and a piano in a tall window." "Daniel," Evelyn said, and the syllables felt like glass in her mouth that somehow didn't cut. "Yes," Sister Maggie whispered. "Daniel? He was a quiet boy. Waited by the gate every evening. Told us his brother begged pardon. He said sister, after a while would come. Children say things to survive. But sometimes, God help us, they're not pretending." The rain softened until it sounded like someone sliding hand over hand down a rope. Evelyn didn't realize she had drifted to the doorway to the music room until her palm touched the glossy curve of the piano's covered shoulder. She lifted the corner of the fabric. Dust lifted with it and turned the lamplight into a tender blur. She placed her hand on middle C and felt the wood's winter cool as if it were pulse. "Not yet," she told herself. "Not until the truth refuses to die." "There's a stamp on the sketch," Amari said. "Blue Haven Fall Festival. You remember anything about that?" "We did a charity booth one year," Sister Maggie said. "Took the children's art to sell for cocoa money. Back when the county still returned our calls. After Daniel ran off, I'm sorry, dear. No one could keep him still when the waiting got too hard. There were rumors he'd gone south. A shelter doctor once sent a note with a name half wiped out by rain. Lucas Daniel. Some boys pick a name that sounds most like theirs when the paper asks. We kept praying." Evelyn closed her eyes. "I built empires," she thought, "and my hands were never this steady." She opened them and looked at Amari. The man straightened, as if they stood at a pledge. "We leave early," she said. "Pennsylvania first. Then North Carolina if the road takes us that way. I want that box, sister. I'll bring a courier if I have to. I'll keep it under the kettle," Sister Maggie said, as if conspiracy were a kind of love. "And, Miss Morera?" "Yes?" "There's a sentence written on the back of the sketch in a child's hand," the nun said. "It says, 'One day my sister will find me.' He changed it, you see." For a moment Evelyn could not answer. The clock clicked, the rain breathed, the house that had learned how to be quiet held a new kind of silence. The kind a church knows when someone kneels without being told. "Thank you," she said, and meant it not to a woman in Pennsylvania but to a world that hadn't quite forgotten how to be kind. She ended the call and let her hand fall from the piano. "Amari," she said. "Yes, ma'am. You did right," she said. "And you're coming with me." Surprise flashed across his face, followed by something steadier than pride. "Yes, ma'am," he said. He bent to lift the toolbox and thought better of it, leaving the dented case where it sat on the polished table as if to mark the first small disobedience of a house built on silence. Evelyn crossed back to the portrait. The boy's half-smile had not changed, but what it meant had. She touched the gilded frame with a fingertip that did not shake, and let the cool metal approve her decision. Maybe justice isn't fair, she thought, borrowing words she had once heard from a man with careful eyes and a custodian's posture. Maybe justice is simply what's left when the truth refuses to die. Outside, the rain slipped into a cleaner rhythm, like a rehearsal slowly remembering itself. In the glass above the mantel, for the briefest instant, she thought she saw two children framed by an open window, one standing on a bench to reach the keys, the other clapping off time, and she let the vision stand. Tomorrow, she said into the quiet, to the boy, the house, the storm. We begin. The next morning arrived wrapped in fog, the kind that softened the skyline until even the city forgot how sharp it was. Evelyn Morera sat by the kitchen window, untouched toast cooling on a china plate, her tablet screen still aglow with overnight market reports she hadn't read. The storm had rinsed the world clean but left the mind restless. She heard the slow rhythm of footsteps in the hall. Amari, always early, moving carefully on the marble so his boots made no echo. The smell of brewed coffee drifted before him. "Morning, ma'am," he said, setting a mug down at a polite distance. He'd added a splash of milk without asking. Somehow he'd noticed the detail the staff always missed. "We can be on the road in an hour if that suits you." Evelyn nodded, eyes still on the window. "Pennsylvania isn't a short drive. 8 hours. Give or take," Amari said. "I've made worse runs for worse reasons." That coaxed a flicker of something like a smile. "You always talk like that?" "Like what?" "As if you've been narrating a long sermon to yourself." "Only when the world won't listen," he said. She let the reply sit between them while the city woke. Outside, delivery trucks hissed along wet asphalt, horns polite in the morning hush. Her mind turned the phrase over. "One day my sister will find me," each word heavy as a stone. When she looked up, she caught Amari glancing at the photograph pinned to the refrigerator door, a candid of her mother taken long before the money and the headlines, the woman's hands mid-gesture at the piano. Evelyn said quietly. "She died 2 years after Leo vanished. Heart failure, they said. But I think hearts decide their own terms." "My mama used to say the same," Amari replied. "She'd say the body just signs what the soul already wrote." They left the house before 9. The Escalade glided down the drive like a ship leaving harbor, tinted windows reflecting clouds. Evelyn sat behind the wheel herself. She'd never liked being driven when her thoughts were louder than engines. Amari occupied the passenger seat, glancing now and then at the GPS but not speaking unless she did. The city thinned into the kind of countryside where barns stood like exclamation points and billboards offered salvation with every mile. Somewhere past Trenton, Evelyn broke the silence. "Why did you stay at Street Vincent so long? Didn't you ever want out?" Amari kept his eyes on the horizon. "Everybody wants out, ma'am. But it's not always about running away. Sometimes you stay because you're the only one who remembers the ones who left. The staff changes, donors forget, but kids remember each other. We were all pieces of somebody else's story that got cut out." She listened, surprised by the eloquence under his plain tone. "You said Daniel drew a piano. Did anyone ever ask why?" "He said his sister played. Said she could turn sadness into sound. When he got punished, he'd draw her instead of crying. The head nurse used to say it was unhealthy living in the past like that, but what did she know? Some of us only survive because we keep remembering." The wipers squeaked once, clearing a small diagonal of view as rain returned in soft threads. Evelyn thought of her boardroom speeches about resilience, of the cameras capturing her poised smile as she spoke of rebuilding communities. What did rebuilding even mean? When the foundation you lost was your own blood. At a rest stop near Lancaster, they stretched their legs. Amari bought 2 coffees and a pack of apple fritters from a gas station bakery case. "Breakfast of the working class," he joked, handing one to her. She took a bite. The sugar startled her tongue with its sincerity. "When was the last time you ate something like this?" he asked. "College," she said. "Before the world expected my meals to have an origin story." He laughed softly. The kind of laugh that made strangers look twice to see what secret they'd missed. By early afternoon, the Pennsylvania hills rolled around them, green washed by rain, the interstate weaving like a ribbon through memory. Street Vincent's appeared at last, a red brick building crouched at the edge of a small town, its sign chipped but still proud. Home for children since 1948. Evelyn parked by a maple tree shedding leaves the color of tarnished brass. Sister Magdalena met them at the door, a petite figure in a gray cardigan, her cross worn smooth by decades of fingers. Miss Morera, she greeted, the name turning gentle in her accent. And you must be Amari. I thought you might call again. She led them down a hallway lined with children's drawings laminated against time-smiling suns, houses with too many windows, stick figures holding impossible balloons. We keep them, she said. Proof that hope once lived here. The office smelled of lemon polish and old paper. On the desk sat a weathered box sealed with twine. This is what Buddy found, Sister Magdalena said, patting the dog napping by the heater. You'll have to forgive him. He only listens when heaven insists. Evelyn untied the box, careful as if it might crumble. Inside were files, faded photographs, and on top a single sketch, crayon lines forming a two-story house with ivy climbing to a window where a brown piano waited. Below, in a child's scrawl, one day my sister will find me. The words blurred as her vision filled with salt. Amari watched without intruding, hat in his hands like a man at a graveside. He made that during art hour, the sister said. He'd draw it, then stare out the window until lights out. Some of the staff worried, but I thought maybe waiting kept him alive. Evelyn asked quietly. When did he leave? Spring of '98, Sister Magdalena said. He was 14. A woman came with papers, said she represented the county. Pretty voice, nurse's uniform. We never saw her again. Later we learned the signature was forged. Teresa Var, Amari said under his breath. The nun blinked. You know the name? Heard it once, Amari replied. She used to volunteer before I arrived. They said she got transferred. Transferred to where? Evelyn asked. Florida, I think. But that was years ago. Evelyn turned the sketch over. A smudge of blue ink at the corner showed a partial stamp. Blue Haven Fall Festival 2002. Her heart quickened. This mark. That was the year we sent the children's art to the fair. Sister Magdalena said. For Coco and Mittens. Maybe he carried one with him. Maybe he found someone kind enough to keep it. Evelyn studied the drawing again. The piano's lid was open, one key shaded darker than the rest, middle C. The same key she'd touched the night before. Do you believe he's still alive? She asked. The sister folded her hands. Faith isn't about believing something is possible. It's about loving it even if it isn't. That answer sat heavy but right. Evelyn thanked her and slipped the sketch into a plastic sleeve. I'll need to borrow these records, she said. I'll sign whatever you require. Take them, the nun said. Justice doesn't keep office hours. When they stepped outside, the rain had stopped. The air smelled of wet earth and lilac. Amari opened the passenger door, then hesitated. He's out there, ma'am, I can feel it. She met his gaze. Feeling won't be enough, she said. We'll need proof. Proof starts with believing, he said. Otherwise it's just paper. On the drive back toward the highway, she looked at the sketch resting on her lap, the colors bright despite the years. Somewhere between the hills and the horizon she whispered. Hold on, little champion. I'm coming. Amari pretended not to hear, but his hands gripped the dashboard as if steadying the promise itself. They drove until the day folded into dusk, the road gleaming like a line drawn straight through 30 years of silence, leading them toward the truth that refused to die. Evening folded itself over the highway as the Escalade pushed south, headlights carving brief tunnels through mist. Evelyn drove without speaking, the sketch from Street Vincent's lying on the dashboard under the soft wash of light. The crayon lines seemed almost to hum with memory. Beside her, Amari watched the wipers keep time. He'd spent half his life mopping other people's floors, yet the silence inside this luxury car felt heavier than any bucket he'd ever pushed. After a long mile he said, It's funny. When I was a kid, I thought the world outside the orphanage had to be brighter. But driving now, I realize it's just bigger. Same shadows, longer walls. Evelyn gave a small nod. Money doesn't shorten them either, she said. It only adds curtains. They passed signs for rest areas, the occasional diner glowing like a stubborn lantern. Her thoughts wandered to Sister Magdalena's words, faith as loving something even if it isn't possible. That kind of faith had once built her life and then abandoned it. She tightened her grip on the wheel. "Do you believe in miracles, Amari?" she asked. "I believe in people who do," he answered. "They're the ones who keep the world spinning." His voice carried a calm she envied. She envied many things about him, not that she would admit it. The way he could still hope without turning it into a business plan. At a roadside motel in Maryland, she booked 2 rooms under an alias. The clerk recognized her anyway, eyes widening at the credit card, but said nothing. Older folks in small towns knew when to protect privacy. The rooms smelled faintly of detergent and dust. Evelyn changed into jeans and a gray sweater, garments so simple they felt like costumes. When she stepped outside, Amari sat on the curb eating a cheeseburger from a paper bag, the kind dripping with unapologetic grease. He held out the second half. "You might want to try real food, ma'am. It keeps you human." She hesitated, then took it, biting without ceremony. The taste hit like memory: college nights, vinyl booths, the reckless hunger of youth. "You were right," she admitted, mouth curved around a small smile. "Don't tell anyone," he said. They ate in quiet companionship while traffic whispered by. Later, when the lights were out, Evelyn lay awake staring at the ceiling fan. In the next room she could hear Amari talking softly, maybe praying. His voice rose and fell like the tide. "Justice isn't fair. It's what's left when truth refuses to die." She turned those words over until sleep finally claimed her. The next morning brought thin sunlight and the hum of early travelers. Over gas station coffee they plotted the day. "Blue Haven's about 5 hours from here," Amari said, tracing the route on a folded map. "We can reach it before dark." "Let's stop in Harrisburg first," Evelyn said. "I have a contact there retired from child services. If Teresa Var forged those adoption papers, someone had to sign off." "You think the system helped her?" "I think systems always help themselves." They reached Harrisburg by noon. The retired official, a white-haired man named Walter Kern, lived in a tidy suburban home whose porch smelled of cigar smoke and rain. He greeted Evelyn with cautious warmth, old politeness meeting old money. "Evelyn Morera," he said. "I've read about your foundation." "Then you know we try to fix what the system misses," she replied. "Today, I need to know what it hid." They sat in his study lined with framed certificates. She laid the photocopy of Daniel's file on his desk. He adjusted his glasses. "Teresa Var," he murmured. She wasn't official state staff. Contract nurse, moved between facilities. There were rumors about falsified records, but the department buried it when funding got threatened. She vanished after a review audit. Nobody looked too hard. "Where did she go?" "Florida, maybe," he said. Word was she worked for a traveling clinic, Child Hope Outreach. Pretty name, ugly trail. Evelyn felt anger surface, sharp and efficient. "If she's still alive, we'll find her." Walter studied her face. "You think this Daniel's your brother?" She didn't answer. Instead she said, "If you'd lost someone, wouldn't you keep looking?" He exhaled smoke through memory. "I did lose someone," he said quietly. "Vietnam, 68. I stopped looking when they sent back a helmet instead of a letter." They shook hands before leaving. Back in the car, Amari asked, "You trust him?" "Enough to believe his regret," she said. The drive resumed, hills flattening into open fields. Somewhere along Route 15 the radio picked up an old country station. A man's voice sang about brothers and trains and things time doesn't mend. Amari turned it down but not off. "Music keeps ghosts polite," he said. She almost laughed. "Do you practice sounding like a philosopher?" "Only on days that end with hope." Late afternoon found them crossing into North Carolina. The air grew warmer, scented with pine and gasoline. Billboards promised antiques, fireworks, salvation. Evelyn felt the strange pull of nostalgia for places she'd never been. At a small-town diner outside Blue Haven they stopped for dinner. The waitress, gray-haired and kind-eyed, refilled their coffees without being asked. "You folks passing through?" she asked. "Looking for family," Amari said. "Aren't we all?" She smiled. When she left, Evelyn leaned forward. "That's what I miss about America," she said. "Strangers assume you have a story worth listening to. Maybe you do, Amari said. Maybe that's what this trip is for you to start telling it. His gaze held hers, steady and unflinching. She looked away first. Outside, twilight pooled around the lampposts, the world preparing for secrets. Back on the road, she studied the sketch again. The more she looked, the more details surfaced. The uneven shutters, a faint shadow shaped like a tree, perhaps meant to be the magnolia that once stood outside her mother's window. She whispered. He remembered everything. That's how missing works, Amari said. You memorize what you can't touch. As night fell, they entered Blue Haven proper, a small coastal town where the air tasted faintly of salt and old wood. Holiday lights already glimmered across Main Street for the upcoming fall festival. Posters on lampposts advertised local artists and a crafts fair. Evelyn parked by a closed bookstore and watched townsfolk setting up stalls, the simple rhythm of community older couples hanging banners, teenagers carrying crates of pumpkins. The sight pierced her unexpectedly. It's beautiful, she said. And cruel, Amari replied. Because someone you love might be standing right there and not know your face. She didn't answer. Instead, she looked at the reflection of the street in the car window lights, strangers, possibilities. In that fragile mirror she thought she saw the outline of a boy with a sketchbook crossing the street, but when she blinked, it was only a man carrying folding chairs. The clock on the dash read 9. She turned the key again. Tomorrow, she said, we start asking questions. Tomorrow, Amari echoed. The car idled while the town went on breathing, unaware that history had come looking for it. Somewhere beyond the line of shops, faint music floated from a rehearsal tent, the thin notes of a piano out of tune but persistent. Evelyn closed her eyes and let the sound find her. It wasn't melody so much as memory, stretching across time, whispering that the search had only begun. Morning broke over Blue Haven with a wash of pale gold that made even the cracked sidewalks look tender. Evelyn and Amari left the motel early, their breaths still visible in the cool air, the town half awake around them. Main Street smelled of roasted coffee and cinnamon rolls. A bakery door propped open to lure customers. The fall festival banners fluttered lazily from lampposts, promising crafts, local art, and live music that weekend. Evelyn adjusted her sunglasses, though the light was soft, more out of habit than vanity. We start at the town records office, she said. If Daniel or Leo was ever here, there'll be something. School registration, a doctor's visit, anything. Small towns remember more than paper does, Amari replied, nodding toward an elderly man sweeping his storefront. Sometimes you just have to ask the right gossip. They began with the courthouse, a brick building with ivy that made Evelyn pause. The sight of green tendrils climbing red walls pulled at the back of her memory, the way the crayon drawing had done. She almost heard a child's voice say, "One day my sister will find me." Inside, the clerk behind the counter looked up with a professional smile that faded when she recognized Evelyn. "Miss Morera," she said, startled. "I read about your foundation in the Times." "I'm here privately," Evelyn said. "Looking into an old matter. A boy named Daniel Lucas possibly lived here around 2002. The clerk typed, the keys clacking like rain on tin. "Daniel Lucas. We had a Lucas family for a while. Foster program. Maybe. Let me check microfilm." She disappeared into a back room, leaving the faint hum of fluorescent lights. Amari leaned on the counter, lowering his voice. "You ever get used to being recognized everywhere?" "No," Evelyn said. "You just learn to wear it like armor." The clerk returned with a thin folder and a yellowed newspaper clipping. "Here," she said, pointing. The article headline read, "Local Boy Wins Art Contest at Fall Festival." Beneath it, a photograph, blurred but unmistakable, showed a teenager holding a sketch pad, hair falling across one eye. "That's him," Amari whispered. Evelyn's chest tightened. The caption listed, "Daniel Lucas, age 14. Do you know where he went after?" she asked. "No records after 2003, the clerk said. But if he stayed local, he might have been with the Merritt family. They ran an auto shop out by Route 7. Evelyn thanked her, folding the clipping carefully as if it were something living. Outside, the morning had grown warmer. "Merritt's Auto," Amari read from a weathered sign when they found it: 2 rusted gas pumps. A corrugated roof. The air thick with oil and memory. A man in his 60s wiped his hands on a rag and squinted at them. "Can I help you folks?" "We're looking for someone," Evelyn said, showing the photo. He went by Daniel Lucas. This was taken about 20 years ago. The man frowned, then his eyes softened. "Well, I'll be. That kid fixed carburetors better than half my nephews. Quiet boy. Liked to draw engines on napkins. Lived out back for a year before heading west. Said he wanted to paint, not repair. Never did say goodbye proper." "West?" Amari asked. "Where?" "Didn't say. Just packed a knapsack and left a note. Thank you for letting me stay where I could hear music again. There was a band playing at the festival that night." Maybe that's what he meant. Evelyn stared at the man's streaked hands, thinking how strangers had held fragments of her brother all this time while she held only guilt. "Do you still have the note?" The man shook his head. "Got rain, soaked, disintegrated. But I remember the handwriting like he was scared of breaking the paper." She thanked him and left a donation for the shop's community fund, though she suspected he'd use it to fix his roof instead. Back in the car, Amari said, "He was here, ma'am. Every clue we found says so." "And then gone again," Evelyn murmured. "Always one step ahead, like he knew I was coming but couldn't stay still long enough to be found. Maybe he thought he didn't deserve to be." She looked at him, surprised. "Why would you say that?" "Because some of us grow up believing we're the mistake other people forgot to throw away." The words hung heavy. Evelyn wanted to argue, to insist that no child should think that way, but she couldn't. The road rolled out before them, bright and merciless. They spent the afternoon talking to locals: the librarian who remembered a shy teenager borrowing art books, the cafe owner who recalled a boy sketching faces for tips. Everyone remembered him fondly, but always in past tense, as if he'd been a season that ended too soon. By dusk they stopped at the pier overlooking the sound. The water caught the last of the sun, turning the horizon into liquid fire. Evelyn leaned on the railing, the sketch clutched in her hand. "He was so close," she said. "So close and I didn't even know." Amari stood beside her. "You couldn't have known. That's the worst part," she said. "I built a fortune on the illusion that information solves everything. Yet the truth was drawing pictures a few hundred miles away." "Maybe it's not about information," he said. "Maybe it's about forgiveness." "Of whom?" "Yourself." The wind picked up, carrying the scent of salt and pine. For a moment neither spoke. Then Evelyn's phone buzzed, a call from a number with a Pennsylvania area code. She answered, and Sister Magdalena's voice came through, thin but urgent. "Miss Morera, forgive me for disturbing you, but there's something you should know. That woman Teresa Var, the authorities think she resurfaced under another name. A nurse volunteering at clinics along the coast. One of my contacts sent a photo. It was taken at a charity booth in Blue Haven last year." Evelyn felt her pulse jump. "She's here?" "Or was," the sister said. "I'm emailing you the picture." The call ended. Moments later, the image loaded: a candid of a fairground, a woman handing out pamphlets. Even blurred, the face froze Evelyn's blood. "She's alive," she said. "And she's been right under our noses." Amari looked at the festival banners fluttering across the harbor. "Then we'll find her there." The festival lights began to spark to life. Strings of bulbs winking on like cautious hope. Evelyn folded the sketch into her coat pocket and squared her shoulders. "Tomorrow night," she said, voice steady. "If Leo's still out there, and she knows where this ends." They walked back to the car, the town humming around them, unaware that 2 lives and 1 long-buried truth were converging again. In the rearview mirror, Evelyn caught a glimpse of the banner snapping in the wind. Blue Haven Fall Festival's celebrating 20 years. The same festival where a boy once drew a piano and waited for a sister who never came. She whispered to herself, "I'm here now, little champion. I'm finally here." The sea answered with a low, endless hush, like a promise too patient to break. By the time Friday arrived, Blue Haven had turned itself into a postcard. Strands of light zigzagged above Main Street, and the smell of caramel corn drifted through the afternoon air. The festival would open by dusk, and the whole town was humming like a well-rehearsed chorus. Evelyn walked among the crowd with her coat buttoned to the collar and her eyes scanning faces the way a detective reads motives. Amari kept a few steps behind, his phone ready with the photo Sister Magdalena had sent. They'd printed 2 copies that morning. The woman in it, Teresa Var, or whatever name she used now, wore a nurse's vest with the logo of a medical charity called Hope Reach. Evelyn had checked. The same organization was sponsoring a health booth at the festival that evening. She's bold, Amari murmured, reading her thoughts. Maybe she thinks no one remembers. People like her count on forgetfulness, Evelyn said. That's why I built a foundation to make forgetting harder. They split up as the sky deepened to copper. Evelyn drifted toward the booths near the waterfront, her heels quiet on the wooden planks. She felt the way she used to before major acquisitions, poised, alert, ruthless, but this time what she wanted couldn't be bought. A brass band struck up an old patriotic tune, and the crowd clapped in rhythm. Children ran past with paper flags, their laughter slicing the evening in clean, careless lines. When she reached the end of the pier, she saw the banner. Hope Reach Mobile Clinic. Beneath it stood a line of white tents, volunteers in blue scrubs handing out pamphlets. One of them was a woman with silver-streaked hair pulled into a bun, her smile automatic, eyes hidden behind sunglasses. Evelyn's heart stumbled. She took a photo with her phone and zoomed in. The cheekbones, the tilt of the jaw, it was her. Teresa Var. Aged but unrepentant. Dispensing free vitamin samples, as if sainthood came in capsules. Evelyn moved closer, the crowd tightening around her. Amari appeared from the opposite side, his expression taut. It's her, he said under his breath. You want me to? No, she interrupted. If we spook her, she'll vanish again. They pretended to browse, pocketing pamphlets. Evelyn's voice was low but steady. We need proof. A name, an address. Or a confession, Amari said. That too. He glanced toward the boardwalk stage where the evening's performers tuned instruments. There'll be fireworks at 9. If she plans to leave, she'll use the chaos. Evelyn nodded. Then we make her talk before that. They waited as the sun dipped, painting the water in strips of fire. The band shifted to softer music, something slow, nostalgic, a waltz meant for small-town romances and old regrets. Evelyn's mind wandered to Leo's drawing, the house with the piano, the window left open for hope to find its way back. She wondered if he was somewhere nearby, drawn to the same song. At 7, she approached the booth, pamphlet in hand. Teresa turned politely, her voice sweet but practiced. Good evening, ma'am. Have you had your health screening today? Evelyn's pulse hammered, but her tone stayed even. I'm more interested in the organization itself. You're with Hope Reach? Volunteer coordinator, the woman said, extending a gloved hand. Name's Teresa Vale. Evelyn didn't take it. Interesting. That's close to another name I've seen, Teresa Var. You wouldn't happen to be related? For a fraction of a second the smile faltered. Can't say I've heard that one. Really? Because I can. I can say it loud enough to draw attention. Amari stepped closer, pretending to look at a display of brochures. Teresa's eyes darted, calculating. I think you have me mistaken for someone else. You took a boy from a Pennsylvania orphanage 25 years ago, Evelyn said quietly. His name was Daniel Lucas. His birth name was Leo Morera. Teresa's breath caught, just enough. I don't know what you're talking about, she said. But the veneer was cracking. Then let's talk to the sheriff, Evelyn said. He's here tonight, isn't he? I'm sure he'd love to hear. The woman snatched the box of pamphlets, muttering an apology to no one, and slipped behind the tent. Evelyn followed instantly, heels striking like gunshots. Amari moved to cut her off from the parking lot, shouting, Ma'am, this way. The chase spilled through a maze of vendors, startled patrons parting as cotton candy clouds swayed. Teresa ducked behind a carousel, pushing through an emergency exit gate. Evelyn ran harder than she thought she could at her age, lungs burning, her coat flaring like wings. They reached the back alley behind the fairgrounds where the noise dimmed to the muffled beat of drums. Teresa turned, breathing hard, eyes sharp. You have no idea what you're undoing, she hissed. That boy was supposed to disappear. He was safer that way. Safer? Evelyn spat. You stole a child. I saved him. Teresa's voice rose. His parents were dead, the world would have eaten him alive. I gave him a name. I gave him a life. You gave him loss. Evelyn took a step forward. Do you even know what he became? Do you care? Teresa's hands trembled. He was special, she said, almost whispering. Could draw anything. But people like us, we don't get to keep beautiful things. We pass them along. Where is he now? Evelyn demanded. Tell me. Teresa looked toward the harbor lights, then back. He went west. I heard he paints murals for churches, somewhere beyond Asheville. That's all I know. Let me go, please. Amari appeared behind her, blocking the path. Not yet, he said. Teresa's face hardened. You think anyone will believe you? You've got nothing but a story. Stories built this country, Amari said quietly. And they can bury you too. She tried to push past, but Evelyn grabbed her wrist. The glove slipped, revealing an old scar across her palm, a mark that matched the description from police reports decades ago. Evelyn took a photo, then let her go. Teresa backed away, voice trembling. You'll regret this. Sometimes the truth costs more than silence. Then she turned and vanished into the darkness toward the lot. Evelyn stood there catching her breath, the echo of sirens somewhere far off, mixing with the laughter of children on the rides. Amari touched her shoulder. You got what we needed, he said. Photo, confession, the rest will follow. She nodded, though her hands were still shaking. She said Asheville, she murmured. If Leo's painting murals, we'll find him. They walked back toward the main street, the festival blooming again around them as if nothing had happened. The fireworks began, bursting over the bay in red and gold. Evelyn stopped to watch, the reflection coloring her face. Funny, she said softly. All these explosions pretending to be celebration. To me, they sound like what's left of fear. Amari looked up too, eyes reflecting the light. Fear's just proof you still care, he said. Otherwise you'd let the sky stay dark. The final burst came a white bloom, bright enough to erase shadows for one heartbeat. Evelyn closed her eyes, letting the noise wash through her. Tomorrow, she whispered. Asheville. The word felt like both a promise and a prayer. The crowd cheered, unaware that in one corner of their quiet town, the past had just stepped out from behind a tent and pointed the way home.